Why is Jerusalem preparing so intensely for something so specific? Something is happening in the city that is capturing the attention of the entire world. Something profound, enigmatic, and to many, disturbing. The holy city. Which for millennia has been the centerpiece of sacred history and prophetic revelation, is now experiencing a unique moment. Something is changing. A quiet but powerful movement is underway. But what kind of preparation is this? And why now? The answer may be more surprising than anyone could have imagined. Why are Jerusalem's eyes suddenly turning urgently to the second coming? What do the city's religious leaders and scholars know that the rest of the world seems to ignore? What hidden messages in Scripture might be fueling this growing anticipation? And most importantly, does this mean that Jesus' return is closer than anyone ever imagined? Recently, priests in Jerusalem identified signs that they say point to the possibility that Christ's return could occur within this generation. One of these signs is related to unusual seismic activity detected under the Mount of Olives, the place that, according to Zechariah 14:4, will be the scene of Jesus' return, when his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives east of Jerusalem, and the mountain will split in two. The prophecy is clear and direct. What if this geological movement is in fact the beginning of its fulfillment? The world is about to witness something that will change everything forever. But is it prepared for what is coming? Or has the prophetic clock already passed the point of no return? For centuries, Bible scholars and believers from different parts of the world have been waiting for four main signs that would indicate the approach of the end and the glorious return of Christ. And what is most alarming, these four signs are happening now, simultaneously. One of them in particular has caused great concern among scholars and theologians because it appears to be irreversible. The first and perhaps most impactful of these signs is the rebirth of the nation of Israel. Scripture predicted that before Jesus returned, Israel would be restored as a nation. For centuries, this seemed impossible. But on May 14, 1948, something extraordinary happened. Israel was officially reborn as a sovereign state, just as Isaiah had prophesied centuries earlier. Can a nation be born in one day? Isaiah 66:8. And yet, it was born. The prophecy was fulfilled with precision. And what's more, on that same day in 1948, astronomers and scholars observed a rare celestial event that to many was a clear sign of divine intervention. This was no mere coincidence. It was a visible sign that God's plan was being fulfilled before the eyes of the world. A people who had been scattered for nearly 2 millennia were returning to their homeland. Since the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 AD, the Jews had been scattered throughout the nations, persecuted, marginalized, and by many considered a people without a future. But the hand of God brought them back. What could have caused this historic change? What invisible force is drawing them back with such intensity? What event during World War II could have forced world powers to recognize Israel's right to its land, even against all odds? And could a new global crisis scenario serve as a trigger for the next prophetic event? After the Holocaust and the horrors of war, the improbable happened. Israel rose from the ashes as a miracle before the nations, an event that many thought impossible, but which was recorded millennia earlier in Scripture. Since then, the prophetic clock seems to have accelerated. In 1967, Israel retook Jerusalem after almost 2,000 years. In 1995, the city was officially declared the eternal capital of the country. In 2018, the United States officially recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, a gesture of great geopolitical and spiritual importance. Today, all eyes of the world are on Jerusalem. The city has become a focal point for political, religious, and spiritual tensions. And the second great sign is emerging with force: the massive return of Jews to the city. Why is this happening now? What is driving this movement on such a large scale and in such a short space of time? Jerusalem is not just preparing, she is responding to something ancient, something prophetic, something that is about to happen. Deuteronomy 33 declares that the Lord will restore the fortunes of his people, have compassion, and gather them again from all the nations where they have been scattered. This ancient promise seems to be being fulfilled before our eyes, but what is behind this surprising return? What mysterious, invisible force, impossible to explain by human logic, is drawing the children of Israel back to their ancestral land with such intensity right now? Ezekiel 37:1-14 presents a powerful vision: dry bones scattered across a valley, representing the people of Israel, crying out that their hope has been extinguished, that they have been cut off from their identity and promise. But God responds with powerful words: "I will open your graves, O my people, and I will bring you up from your graves. I will bring you back to the land of Israel." It is as if a voice echoes from the graves of history, calling the people to return. But could this same force that is gathering Israel also be signaling something even greater about to happen? Ezekiel's vision was not just a symbol of the past. It is becoming a reality in our day. The process of return is still ongoing. It is not over. Something beyond human will seems to be drawing the Jews back, even against all odds and obstacles. What is the call that is coming from Jerusalem that is, in an almost supernatural way, gathering the exiles back? And at the center of this movement, an even more profound preparation is quietly being carried out: the rebuilding of the Third Temple. For thousands of years, Jews have been eagerly awaiting this sacred moment. The promise of a restored temple is mentioned in numerous passages of Scripture, including the book of Daniel, the book of Revelation, and even in the words of Jesus himself. And today, this ancient hope is moving from the realm of dreams to reality. Sacred items of fundamental importance to temple worship have already been rediscovered and are being prepared with great care. Pieces that, once assembled, could speed up construction at any moment. The rediscovery of religious artifacts, such as the golden menorah, silver utensils, and the high priest's vestments, are just some of the elements that show that everything is almost ready. The temple is no longer a distant idea. It already has architectural plans, trained priests, and consecrated instruments. All that is missing is political permission, an authorization that, if granted, could trigger a new prophetic era. But what is behind this rebuilding drive? What mysterious ceremony is being prepared by the priests of Jerusalem that could inflame tensions in the Middle East? The book of Daniel 9:27 speaks of a peace agreement that will be signed for 7 years, but that will be broken halfway through that period, interrupting the sacrifices in the temple. This implies that the temple will already be standing when this break occurs. So the question arises: who is this shadowy figure who is planning this deadly pact behind the scenes? The prophecy speaks of a future world leader who will rise with power and influence, promoting an apparent peace, but who will ultimately bring destruction. And this figure will not only break the pact, but will also enter the temple and exalt himself as if he were God himself. Paul in 2 Thessalonians 2:4 warns that this man will oppose everything that is holy, taking God's place in the temple and demanding worship. But for this to happen, the temple must exist, which indicates that its construction is a central piece in the eschatological fulfillment. The Temple Institute, a Jerusalem-based organization, has now dedicated all its efforts to this goal. They have already made all the ritual elements, from the golden lampstand to the trumpets and sacred vessels. The priestly vestments have been recreated based on biblical specifications, and most impressively, priests from the lineage of Aaron are already being trained for the sacred rituals. The temple is ready to be built. All that is needed now is the green light. However, before any stone is laid, the place and the instruments of worship must be purified. According to Numbers 19, this purification depends on a very specific element: the ashes of a perfect red heifer without blemish or defect. Without it, none of the sacred rituals can be performed. This seemingly small detail has become one of the most intriguing points of modern prophecy, because only with the existence of this heifer can worship in the Third Temple officially begin. The question now is, who is trying to stop this construction? What forces, spiritual, political, or military, are waging this silent battle to prevent the fulfillment of prophecy? Who holds the final key to unlock the beginning of the works? And what exactly are they waiting to use it for? What is happening in Jerusalem is not just a political or cultural movement. It is the unfolding of an age-old spiritual narrative, a countdown that is accelerating before our eyes. Everything points to the fact that something much bigger is about to happen, and the preparations are not stopping. History is being written, and the world, prepared or not, is about to be shaken by it. For more than 2 millennia, The Jewish people have searched tirelessly for a heifer to see a cow that meets extremely specific requirements. The animal must be entirely red, without any physical blemish or defect, and must never have carried a yoke upon itself. This search is linked to an ancient biblical instruction contained in Numbers 19:2, which establishes that, for the purification of the people and the temple, the sacrifice of a heifer with these extremely rare characteristics is necessary. And then, in 2022, something surprising happened. 5 perfect red heifers arrived in Israel, brought directly from the United States. This event caused a stir among religious people and scholars of prophecy. What drew the most attention was not only the arrival of these animals, but the strange sign that appeared that same day, something that deeply disturbed the priests and made them tremble with fear. Since then, these animals have been carefully observed. If at least one of them remains ritually pure until it reaches the required age, it can be used in the sacrifice necessary for the purification of the site where the third temple will be built. With this seemingly final piece falling into place on the prophetic board, it feels like we are getting closer to the complete fulfillment of Scripture. But what if the final piece of this great puzzle is something no one is expecting? What if the site where the temple needs to be built is not exactly where it has always been believed? A new controversy has recently arisen. Archaeological evidence and ancient documents are challenging the traditional consensus about the true location of the Temple Mount. While many argue that the new temple will be built next to the current Dome of the Rock, others argue that the entire Temple Mount plateau should be cleared. Still others believe that the true location of the Holy of Holies is in an area completely different from the one known today. While the debates continue, one thing is certain: Israel's religious leaders are not taking this issue lightly. They believe that the rebuilding is imminent and are taking all preparations very seriously. But as this progress is being made, tensions are growing. What could happen if the work actually begins? A violent conflict seems inevitable. A quiet battle may already be taking place behind the scenes, far from the public eye. The Third Temple is not just a prophetic promise of Judaism. It is seen by many as a marker of a time, a clock ticking steadily toward the end of the last days, and each new development accelerates this prophetic clock. The construction of the temple is no longer a distant idea, but a concrete possibility about to become reality. Time is running out. Meanwhile, another important sign of prophecy is becoming more and more apparent. The nations of the world are turning against Jerusalem. Scripture warns that in the last days, all nations will unite against the holy city. What once seemed impossible is now unfolding before our eyes. Treacherous political alliances are being formed in secret. International groups are meeting quietly to decide the future of Jerusalem, and many of these decisions do not favor Israel. Zechariah 12:3 had already warned, "In that day I will make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all peoples. All who try to lift it will be severely injured." The prophecy could not be clearer. The world is challenging the spiritual sovereignty of the city of God, and the question that echoes is, what will be the fate of the first nation that dares to defy this warning? The international political situation is moving towards an attempt to divide Jerusalem through the so-called two-state plan. World leaders are pushing for a solution that would hand over part of the city to another government, removing Israel's exclusive control over its ancient capital. The proposal even suggests an internationalization of the city, which would place the most sacred place on the planet under the control of a global entity. However, the Bible is categorical. Jerusalem belongs to the Lord, and all those who try to divide what is God's will face judgment. In Joel 3:2, we read that God himself will gather the nations in the valley of Jehoshaphat to judge them for scattering his people among the peoples and dividing up their land. The warning is direct, and yet the world continues to defy this sacred boundary. Today we are witnessing a shift in the international landscape. Nations that once supported Israel are now turning away. Governments that were once allies are beginning to condemn Israel's sovereignty over its own land, and global powers are strategically organizing themselves, preparing the ground for a possible reversal in control of Jerusalem. The stage is set. The countdown is on. The city that has always been the heart of prophecy is now also the epicenter of divisions that could shape the destiny of all humanity. And as preparations continue, the question remains, who will dare challenge the city of the living God? And how long will the Lord allow his land to be disputed before intervening with power? Today, Jerusalem is under the watchful eye of the world's largest organizations and the most influential leaders on the planet. Every decision involving the holy city sparks heated debates and strategic positions among the powerful on earth. Everyone wants to have a say, influence, or control the future of the most disputed city in history. But behind these political and diplomatic moves, one truth becomes increasingly evident. Ancient prophecies are being fulfilled, and the center of it all continues to be Jerusalem. There is one place in Jerusalem that stands out as the epicenter of the greatest religious and geopolitical tensions in the world: the Temple Mount. It is the most sacred place in Judaism, where the first and second temples once stood, and where, according to the scriptures, the third temple will be built. The dispute over this specific piece of land has generated intense and growing conflicts, and many believe that it will be precisely this dispute that will trigger an unprecedented global war. The Bible already warned us that Jerusalem would be the trigger for a great conflict between nations, and the evidence of this is unfolding before our eyes. The progress of the prophecies is faster than many expected. In Zechariah 14:2, it is written that God will gather all the nations against Jerusalem to make war against it. The city will be invaded, and the world will unite in opposition to the Holy Land. And it will be precisely in this scenario that Jesus himself will return. While world leaders plan strategies against Jerusalem, the city is silently preparing for the fulfillment of what was announced millennia ago. The people are returning. The signs are aligning, and Scripture follows a script that no human being can control or change. The world may think it is in control, but the end of this story has already been written by God. The culmination of all prophecy is the return of Jesus, and the Bible reveals exactly where that return will take place. Zechariah 14:4 states that on that great day, the feet of the Lord will rest on the Mount of Olives, east of Jerusalem. When that happens, the mountain itself will split in two. This is not just a symbolic metaphor. Scientists have confirmed that there is an active fault line directly beneath the Mount of Olives. If a major earthquake were to occur there, the mountain could indeed split, just as Scripture foretells. Researchers are intrigued by recent seismic signals in the area, trying to understand what might be about to happen. Could this unusual activity be yet another indication that the time of fulfillment is approaching? The signs are everywhere. Jerusalem continues to prepare, and time is rapidly running out. But there is one final sign that some scholars believe will appear on the Mount of Olives before the King returns. And the most amazing thing is that this sign may already be beginning to manifest. In Matthew 24:42, Jesus warns us, "Therefore keep watch, for you do not know on what day your Lord will come." His return is near. Jerusalem is being shaped for this great moment. The big question is, when that day comes, will the world be able to recognize the signs, or will it be caught completely off guard? The Bible is no ordinary book. It is unique, unlike any other work recorded in public libraries. It narrates in detail and precisely the history of the world from its origin to its end. No other historical record covers such a vast scope. After all, no human being was present at the beginning of everything to record the first events. Therefore, only God could reveal the beginning and the end. And more than that, he shared these revelations with his people, not to arouse mere curiosity, but so that we would be prepared. The goal was never to confuse, but to guide and warn. Jesus was direct in revealing to us what was coming, so that we would be ready and not in a state of shock when everything began to unfold. Many people ask, are we living in the end times? And the answer, according to the Bible, is that the last days began a long time ago. In fact, they began more than 2,000 years ago on the day of Pentecost, when the first eschatological prophecies began to be fulfilled. Since then, every Christian generation has been called to live as if the Lord's return could happen at any moment, vigilant, awake, and with their eyes fixed on the divine promises. The scriptures are full of prophecies. In all, there are 735 prophecies recorded in the Bible. One in every 4 chapters contains predictions about the future. From Genesis to Revelation, the Bible is essentially a prophetic book, although some parts focus on this more than others. And now, more than ever, we are living in days when these ancient words seem to come to life before our eyes. Time is moving forward. The pieces are falling into place. and the history of humanity is moving inexorably toward its prophetic climax. To date, 596 biblical prophecies have already been fulfilled exactly as they were announced in the scriptures. This represents about 81% of all the prophecies contained in the Bible, and many of them were written centuries before they came true. This impressive accuracy further strengthens the confidence that the remaining 19% will also come true, not by chance, but because they are part of a divine plan that is fully underway. The fulfillment rate is so high that it would be irrational to doubt the veracity of the rest. So far, all the prophecies that could be fulfilled have already come true exactly without exception. Many of the prophecies that are still awaiting fulfillment are related to the second coming of Jesus Christ and the extraordinary events that will follow. This raises the question, how many of these prophecies still need to happen before the Messiah returns? The answer revolves around 20 specific events. We are attentive to each of them because they are like milestones that precede the Lord's return. Jesus taught us to watch and pray not passively, as if we were just looking up at the sky waiting for him to appear, but actively and consciously, observing the events around us and discerning the signs that he himself revealed to prepare us. These signs are like warnings given in advance so that we are not caught off guard, and to understand them clearly, we can turn to chapter 24 of the Gospel of Matthew. In it, Jesus' disciples approach him privately on the Mount of Olives and ask, "Lord, when will these things happen? What will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age?" The answer Jesus gives is clear, direct, and full of details. We can thank God for not leaving these questions shrouded in mystery, but rather for giving instructions that anyone can understand if they are willing to listen. In Revelation, this answer is extended and presented in a more symbolic and profound way. But in Matthew 24, Jesus gives a straightforward list of the events that will precede his coming. He begins by warning, "Watch out that no one deceives you. Many will come in my name claiming I am the Christ and will deceive many." He goes on to say that we will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but that we should not be alarmed, because these things must happen, even if they do not represent the immediate end. He goes on to say that nations will rise against nations, kingdoms against kingdoms, and that there will be famines, earthquakes, and disasters in various parts of the world. However, all these events would be just the beginning of the birth pangs, like the first labor contractions, indicating that something much greater and more profound is about to come. Jesus also warns that his followers would be persecuted, imprisoned, and even killed, and that the world would hate them because of his name. Many would be scandalized, abandon the faith, and betray one another. False prophets would arise and deceive multitudes. Evil would multiply, and the love of many would grow cold. However, he assures that those who persevere to the end will be saved, and he adds, "The gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come." Jesus also mentioned that at a certain point, the abomination of desolation, a reference to Daniel's prophecy, would be visible, set up in a holy place. Upon seeing this, those in Judea should immediately flee to the mountains. He instructs that no one should return to get their belongings, and warns that these days will be extremely difficult, especially for women who are pregnant or breastfeeding. Jesus also asks that they pray that this flight will not occur in winter or on the Sabbath, because there will be affliction so intense as has not been seen since the beginning of the world, and that will never be equaled again. Indeed, if this time were not shortened, no one would survive. But for the sake of God's elect, these days will be shortened. He also emphasizes that false Christs and false prophets will arise, performing signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect themselves. He says, "See, I have warned you in advance. Therefore, if anyone tells you, 'Look, the Messiah is in the desert,' or 'He is hiding in a certain place,' do not believe it. For the return of the Son of Man will be like lightning that comes from the east and shines even to the west, sudden, visible, and unmistakable." These words of Jesus are not abstract metaphors or vague warnings. They are precise guidelines so that we are prepared, awake, and aware of reality. Spiritual and prophetic age in which we live, each generation is called to live with a ready heart, knowing that the final fulfillment can happen at any moment. And if 81% of the prophecies have already been fulfilled perfectly, the remaining signs are like the hands of a clock, pointing to the culminating moment of history, the return of the King. Just as the presence of vultures indicates that there is a body nearby, the signs that have appeared in the world are evidence that the end is approaching. These events are not happening by chance. They are clear indications that a decisive moment is about to happen. Soon after the period of intense tribulation and anguish, the Bible reveals that shocking cosmic phenomena will occur. The sun will be darkened, the moon will stop shining, the stars will fall from the sky, and the celestial structures will be shaken profoundly. And then, in an instant awaited for centuries, the unmistakable sign of the coming of the Son of Man will appear in the sky. This event will be so powerful and impressive that it will cause lamentation and weeping among all the peoples of the earth. The nations, in view of what they will see, will not be able to hide their anguish, for they will see with their own eyes the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven, surrounded by incomparable glory and power. At that moment, the angels of God will be sent with the resounding sound of a trumpet. They will travel throughout the earth and the heavens to gather the Lord's chosen ones from every corner of the world, from every distant point. No one will be forgotten. It will be the great final gathering, prepared since the foundation of the world, where the faithful will be gathered by direct order of the glorified King. Jesus invites us to learn a simple yet profound lesson by observing the fig tree. When its branches begin to bud and its leaves appear, we know that summer is approaching. Likewise, when all these signs begin to manifest themselves, we should know that the return of Christ is very close, literally at the door. And he assures us, "Truly I tell you, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things are fulfilled." This reinforces that the time between the signs and the complete fulfillment of the promises will be short. Even if heaven and earth, with all their apparent solidity, disappear, Jesus' words will remain eternal. Nothing he said will be forgotten or annulled. However, no one can say for sure what the exact day and hour will be when all this will happen. Not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son himself, but only the Father knows the moment. This passage of Scripture presents 4 unmistakable signs that precede the return of Jesus. One of these signs is already in full swing, visible to those who have attentive spiritual eyes. The other 3, however, have yet to be fully manifested. Therefore, we can say with conviction that we are living in the beginning of the end. Not the absolute end, but the initial phase of the last days, like birth pangs that announce a new spiritual birth and the glorious return of the Messiah. Every new world event, every stirring among nations, and every sign that unfolds before us serves as a reminder that history is moving toward its prophetic climax. We are being called to wake up, to remain vigilant and prepared, for time is running out and the King is about to return.